talking about?
What would be the first issue that you would change if you're elected governor?
I think the first issue would be confronting two things. The first is correcting the tax that I mentioned that was only for 5 years, fixing that in perpetuity. And the second one would be readjusting the tax brackets. A millionaire's tax today is not a millionaire's tax from 20 years ago, and you need to make it extra tranches towards the top. And the reason I say those two things is because I'm not going to have the same political capital 6 months or a year in that I would have in the first 3 months. If you're going to fix the budget, you've got to fix the revenue part of the conversation. You need to do that when you first get in there.
Mayor, just a quick question. I know Jersey City, obviously I'm a County resident, I know about Jersey City. Affordability is probably the biggest issue during this race. Is Jersey City a realistic model for the whole state, though? Because some residents might speak.
Yeah, totally. Jersey City has built more affordable housing than anybody. The problem is a regional conversation. If you don't have a regional conversation around housing, you're not going to be able to move it forward. I would point out that you have candidates up here that talk about housing for the first time. For the first time, that they polled it a month ago or 2 months ago, and they say, now I'm going to talk about housing. And I don't think there's anybody other than Mayor Baraka, myself, and I'm even going to say Sean Spiller as a mayor has more experience in housing. So I think it's a regional conversation. I think we have the most comprehensive plan. It's detailed, and I think I'd be able to execute on that.
Mayor Fulop,
yes.
Your
is wanting to cut spending and issue that all spending. Cuts are probably going to be coming one by one.
Yeah.
So we're going to have healthcare cuts, we're going to have education cuts.
Yeah.
And there's obviously, what
Yeah.
are you going to do as governor to make sure New Jersey is a fighter like
Yeah, I think first of all you want a track record of somebody who's willing to fight. There's nobody in New Jersey that has the same track record I do as it relates to Bob Menendez and George Norcross, and at times the teachers union. I've been mixing it up with all of them, and I think on the side of good government. There's nobody else out here that could say that the Kushner family and the Trump family actually sued them personally over a tax abatement for 5 years. We went through this and we won. So the track record is a fighter, and I would be the same. Also, being from a municipal government, I think it's really important to have experience on what you can achieve. So for example, when you talk about wind energy, it's very important, renewable energy, but with a federal government that's not going to be supportive, you need to think about environmental priorities that we can achieve here. Warehouse moratoriums, preservation of open space, added green acres funding. Those are things that you know as a municipal government. I would just say one thing. My objective tonight, sandwiched next to a preacher who's a good friend of mine, and some Congress people that I think were maybe less substantive. My agenda for tonight was to convey that being a mayor of a city like Jersey City, that I understand nuances and details and not speak in platitudes. And I think that when it came out to questions from immigration, where we have a track record, to the trans community, where we have a track record, to transportation, when I could talk about these 3 things I would do, those are my goals ultimately. So I feel good about the way it went tonight. I think it's a long race, and I think that we built a structure that's pretty unique here.
Mayor Fulop, equity was a big part of the conversation on the stage tonight. Your opponent, Newark Mayor Ross Baraka, has talked about reparations, saying that is a need absolutely necessary in this state. Your town passed reparations referendum back in 2022 to assemble a task force. Would you sign legislation to assemble a task force for reparations?
It would depend what a task force. A task force, sure, to study it. I do think that we need to be conscious of historical issues in a state like New Jersey. And it's what the task force has. I think equity is a big conversation. There's no question about it. I think Trump has targeted the most vulnerable communities. I think this was a healthy conversation. Some people tonight said that they protect the trans community and the immigrant community, and their voting record has nothing to do with that. I think if you think about the Jersey City track record on immigration, on trans, on housing, it's second to none. Second to none.
So would you be at least open to that task force? Would you consider signing?
A task force is good to explore, definitely, to have a conversation around this. Nobody should oppose a task force. Absolutely not. Let's see what the task force comes to and how we can actually utilize some recommendations in a fair way that's responsible. So task force, I don't think anybody should oppose.
So you as a mayor, you have the role of managing the finances and the tax rate in the town.
Yeah.
So given that position, how much did you really depend on Trenton to get that done, to help manage and lower taxes? And once you step into that job, how realistic is it for a governor to actually impact lowering property taxes?
I think it is crucial, and I said this, that a mayor is in that position. The last 8 years, you've had somebody who was an ambassador, the 8 years before that, a U.S. attorney, the 4 years before that, U.S. I said all that. So what do I think? I think the short answer is yes, somebody who understands budgets on a local level, the unfunded mandates that I touched on, I could go through a litany of them, from lead to Megan's laws to STD tracking, all noble things that we have to do on the municipal front. Also consolidation. People up here talk about consolidation and platitudes. There is nobody who has been more at the forefront than Jersey City has. Merging our fire and police, eliminating the autonomous agencies, etc. I think those skills are really important in a tough time that we're facing over the next 4 years.
So what is your plan for property tax relief, though? I mean, Gottheimer, for example,
Yeah.
has laid out his...
Yeah, none of it's realistic. I think,
What's unrealistic?
Well, the realistic is that if you could just change the procuring process and save 5%, I'm certain that Governor Murphy would have done that, okay? Like, the reality is that New Jersey has processes in place on this to create equity and fairness. Unless you are going to gut that, you don't understand how the procurement process works. I talked about the unfunded mandates because I know that as a mayor, it is a big opportunity. I think the second part is the budget process. You need a governor that's going to lean into making that earlier to create sunshine. Republicans are correct when they talk about that Trenton has a spending problem under these Democrats. They're not wrong about that, and sunlight will cleanse that. I think third that I touched on is you need to really talk about the revenue conversation, the millionaire's tax, those sort of things, some of the Christie tax cuts that he put in place. How do you roll those back in a responsible way to make it equity and equitable? And that's it. Okay. So with that, thank you all for coming out tonight. Hopefully that's helpful, and you can always reach out to us any other questions.